Let's speak to Tom Latchem now, who hosts Raw, which is the 90s rave podcast. Tom texted into the show. Hi, Tom.
How you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for getting in contact with us, Tom, because you've got a unique insight into this. Because you interview, don't you, a lot of DJs, MCs, promoters, who have seen their livelihoods, stop, right? I mean, there's no safety net for a lot of these guys, is there?
No, well, I mean, as they tell me, they've ripped through their savings. I mean, fair play to them for having savings in the first place, but they're rapidly going, and there seems to be no clear pathway to when they're next going to play out. And I mean, I should say as well, you're talking about young people, and I feel so sorry for young people during all this. It must be absolutely awful. But it's not just young people either. I've got all the analytics on my podcast so far suggest the 90s Rave podcast is listened to by 35-year-olds and above, and they still want to go raving. They still party. And
I do. Yeah, well, I did.
I do too. I went in March to one just before lockdown, and it was a strange feeling to go to one, knowing that this thing was happening, and obviously haven't been since. But people have been going to party and to dance to music since time immemorial. This is not a new thing. This isn't something that came about in the 90s with the 90s rave scene. Even you go back beyond that, you had sound. A lot of the people who I interviewed were involved in sound systems before that with reggae and things like that. So this isn't a new thing by any stretch, but it's incredibly worrying. And one of my DJs that I spoke to, Brian G, he's a drum and bass sort of hero, and he recently went to play on a boat in the Czech Republic, and there was a lot of jealousy, I think, from other DJs who were sort of going, "Oh man, we all want to play." It was like, "I will, for the same price, I will play all night. It's all I want to do." And I do wonder whether if the UK can't do it, you might see a resurgence or an uplift rather in those kind of events abroad, where social distancing measures are slightly different, where they can do it out on a boat, for instance, where outdoors obviously transmission is less and that sort of thing. So the thing is, with rave music, there's always been a DIY industry, and they've always found a way through. However it was, whether it was setting up their own rigs, or it was putting on illegal parties, or then coming in and doing legal ones, they've always found a way through. This is probably the biggest challenge they've ever faced, but I do think that eventually they will get through. I don't know what it will be, but I do think they'll get through.
But the problem is, Tom, is that, and as has been mentioned a number of times already in this conversation, is about not the illegality as such, but the lack of safety that not just the customers themselves, the ravers themselves, but the DJs and the MCs will put themselves through.
Yes, although I would say that probably does add to the excitement somewhat. I think you could probably say. I think that's going too far to say. I think the thing is, it's going to happen, isn't it? We're seeing it. It is happening.
Yeah,
so therefore, the government have a decision to make. The government have a decision to make whether they allow this thing to happen. And we've seen horrible instances at some of these illegal raves, really serious, grave things that probably wouldn't happen at a licensed event. So the government's got a decision to make, hasn't it? The government's got to go, well, we've got to weigh this up. What are we okay with? Are we okay with the potential for transmission, or for the potential for really, really grave, serious things that can happen at these unlicensed events? What that decision will be and when it will happen, I don't know. I think that the government, frankly, doesn't care about dance music and rave music. It tried to kill it in the 90s, and it's trying to do it again, albeit for different reasons.
So Tom, is there a genuine concern amongst the DJs and MCs, promoters, that a lot of events will just not return, and a lot of venues will just not return?
Absolutely. We're already seeing venues closing, some threatening to close, some already closed, crowdfunding to help keep venues open. Hundreds, dozens of them. Some of them have got some money from the government, which has been very useful, but it doesn't go around to all of them. And I think that the danger is, you look at the government, and the government have funded. So the government is a conservative government, and the conservative governments tend to like classical music and theatres and that sort of thing. And there's a real push to open up that side of British culture, but they've never been interested in this sort of music. And to be fair,
I don't think Labour governments were full of ravers either, if I'm honest.
Possibly, but I think you probably, you understand